Welcome to Nifty 50 Photographers. Today I'm going to tell you what I think is the best camera to go for a beginner. I'll give you a run through of the main camera types and a few recommendations on what I think are the best options. I'm Richard Gill and I'm a professional photographer. I specialise in architecture, property, commercial photography and video for businesses. I provide free photography training for those of us who are a little bit older, especially if you've got a bit of grey hair or maybe not so much hair at all, then this is the place for you. I post weekly videos every Friday showing you how to better understand your camera, how to compose and edit your photos, so the image you had in your head when you press the shutter should match the one you see on the back of the camera after you've pressed that shutter. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and join our community. And remember to hit the bell button too so you get notified when I release a new video. Okay, so let's get started. If you stay to the end, I've got a little bonus tip for you if you're looking to buy a camera right now. So, the most common camera types are smartphones, point and shoot cameras, hybrid or bridge cameras, DSLRs, and mirrorless DSLRs. So which one should you go for? Well, let's take a look at the main differences between the different types. Smartphones. Perhaps the most important thing is you nearly always got it with you. Quality is generally pretty good and it's getting better, and they're very easy to use. It's great for images that you're going to post on social media or only ever see on a screen. What I don't like about them is they don't give you a lot of options for creative control. They do provide some filters. Some of the newer, more sophisticated phones have options like a portrait mode, for example, and they do have built-in lenses so that you can do zoom and telephoto. However, the physical size of the phone does limit the size of the optics and therefore the quality of the optics they can use. So if you're going to blow your prints or images up into large, A3 size prints, then you might find they're going a bit fuzzy or pixelated. There is a lot of great software built in to help enhance your photos, but that takes away the creative control from you. So as I said, they're a great option, and probably the best thing about them is you've always got them with you. What I would recommend is you really learn how the camera works in it, how to understand composition, and how things like focus control and exposure control can be changed in your smartphone so that you can really get the best image possible. Point and shoot cameras. Almost the same as a smartphone in many ways. Small and compact, easy to carry, slip into your pocket or handbag, making them a great thing for travel or maybe for going on a night out or something where you don't want to carry around anything bulky and heavy. They do give you things like better optics. You can zoom the lens in and out to go from a wide angle to a telephoto. You can also get some creative control as well, depending on the particular model. The things I have against them is the optics are still a little bit limited. Some of the zoom function will be done digitally rather than through good quality lenses. And that can show up, especially if you're doing bigger prints. In low light photography, so in a dark situation, the flash is pretty small and therefore the power of it is limited. So you just might not get enough light to get the photo you wanted. Finally, I would say, because there are so many features similar to your smartphone, if you've got a good quality smartphone with a good camera in it, why would you need a point and shoot camera as well? You're almost duplicating the two devices. So let's move on to another type, and I'm sorry I haven't got an example to show you here because it's not something I've used. It's the hybrid or bridge camera. Now this is a sort of crossover point between the point and shoot camera and a digital SLR. They often have a bigger lens. It's usually built in, so it's not interchangeable. But they are very good for travel and vlogging because they do give you a lot of creative control, and the lens that they come with usually spans a wide range from pretty wide angle right up to a big telephoto. So it's very much a one size fits all solution. Particularly the Panasonic Lumix is loved by vloggers, and it's probably for that reason. They're still quite light and easy to carry around, and they give all the features and the creative control that you need. Let's move on to the DSLR, Digital Single Lens Reflex. Bit of a mouthful, but in all honesty, you don't really need to understand a great deal about what that means. What happens in a digital SLR is light passes through the lens, goes through the camera and comes out and into the viewfinder. So what you're seeing through the viewfinder is what the camera lens is looking at, and that means you're seeing the image you're going to take. And this is what most professionals use in their everyday photography, or perhaps the mirrorless version of it, which I'm just going to talk about in a moment or two. There are a lot of good things about it. First of all, the image quality is really excellent. You can change lenses as well, so you get lenses that are dedicated to the kind of photography you're doing at that time. So this gives you a lot of options, a lot of creative control, but maintains image quality. They're very robust, so they can stand some knocks and banging about when you're using them every day. They will give you complete creative control, especially when you get to the higher end models that will allow you to change all the functions. So you're totally in charge of the image you want to take and how you control the light. They can also do things like give you very fast frame rates. So what I mean by that is the number of shots you can take in a second. And that can be things like 10 frames a second. So 10 shots every second. It's great for capturing movement or a particular moment in time, you know, if you're doing things like sports photography and you want to catch that very moment that the goal was scored. On the downside, they're big and bulky and they're heavy, and it's a big lump to carry around, and sometimes that can just be inconvenient, especially if you're traveling and want to take them on a plane, for example. You might need to use a big camera bag to carry your camera and all the lenses and other accessories you'll need with it. So let's talk about the sister to the DSLR, which is the mirrorless version. Now what happens here, light goes through the lens, but it goes straight onto the back of the camera's sensor. And that's where it's processed, and it'll then show up on an electronic display. And the viewfinder might also have a little electronic display in it, so it becomes an electronic viewfinder rather than you're seeing light that's bounced off a mirror. What you're seeing is the camera processing the image and putting it on the viewfinder for you. The good thing about it is it makes a DSLR a little bit lighter and a little bit more compact, so easier and more comfortable to carry around, especially if you're using it all day. As a general point, I would say the big camera manufacturers, Nikon, Canon, Sony and so on, are focusing a lot of their development efforts in this area. So you will see that the new models that come out are often these mirrorless versions. The bad news is they're more expensive. And it is the kind of camera I would recommend if you're not constrained by budget, this is the one to go for. There's one other issue we need to talk about, and that's sensor size. There are two main sensor sizes. There's what they call crop frame sensors and full frame sensors. What does that mean? So let's start with full frame. So full frame has the same dimensions as 35mm film, which is what cameras originated for in this DSLR space. It's what I grew up on. A crop frame sensor, as its name implies, is smaller. And this then magnifies the image by approximately 1.5 times to give you that equivalent dimension of the 35mm film. So as a rule of thumb, if you want to take something the same as your eye, or you want your camera to see what your eye would see, if you had a full frame camera with a 50mm lens, you're going to see pretty much what your eye sees. If you're going to use a crop frame sensor, then a 35mm lens would give you the same sort of image. So that's 35mm times by 1.5 is magnified up, and that's giving you the same image size as what your eye is going to see. Now, the advantages and disadvantages of the two. So crop frame sensors, arguably slightly less quality from the image. Big advantage of them is they're a lot cheaper. Full frame sensors is giving you that one-to-one view, And when you're composing, that can be a real advantage because you're seeing exactly what you're getting, and you're seeing that in the viewfinder as you take the picture. However, if you're into sports and wildlife photography, you really might want that magnification effect because it's going to get you closer to the subject. So the advantage of having that 1.5 times magnification can be a real benefit. So you might want to go for the crop frame sensor for that very reason. I'll give you an example. If I put a 300mm lens on a full frame camera, then I can get close to my subject. I could get as close to my subject with a crop frame sensor with only a 200mm lens. 200 times by 1.5 is 300. So that's how you get the same comparison. The advantage of that is usually a 200mm lens is cheaper than a 300mm lens. So, and when you get up to really big magnifications, some wildlife photographers and sports photographers will be using lenses like a 600mm. Put that onto a crop frame sensor, then you've really got a lot of extra magnification because you've got 1.5 times that 600mm. So what do I recommend you go for? Well, I think the first decision you need to make is choose a budget and then try and stick to it. I mean, you might want to allow yourself a bit of tolerance, say plus 10% or something, but define your budget and then you can go and choose the makes and models you want. So I've put together some ideas for 3 different budgets. So if you've got £500, £1,000 or £2,000. And so let's have a look at some of the options you've got there. So a couple of things I need to say at the start. So camera makes and models are changing all the time. These are the ones that are relevant as I'm making this video in January 2021. I'm going to suggest that you go with a DSLR or the mirrorless version of it. And that's what the rest of my tutorials will be focused on how to get the best out of that kind of camera. It's great for giving you creative control, and it allows you to build your hobby into something that you can get very serious about right up to professional level. One thing to bear in mind is with a DSLR or a mirrorless, you're buying a camera body and a lens. Now often there will be kit deals put together by the manufacturer where you get the body and lens together, and they'll give you a special price for that bit of kit. Now I put links in the description below of all the makes and models I'm recommending, so don't worry if you don't see them fast enough on the screen. So let's start with a budget of £500. There are a couple of DSLRs you could get for this. You're not going to get into a mirrorless at that sort of cost level, but you could go for the Nikon D3500 with a kit lens or the Canon EOS 2000D. If you've got a bit more money to spend, say £1,000, then you've got quite a few more options. You could go for a Canon EOS 850D, again with a kit lens, 18 to 55mm, or you could go for a Pentax K70 with an 18 to 135 kit lens. Now that 18 to 135 is giving you a lot more options. It's going from a wide-ish angle up to telephoto. The same thing with a Nikon. You can get a Nikon D5600 with an 18 to 140 lens for about the same kind of money. You do have the option to get into mirrorless cameras at this kind of budget level. Some great ones to look at would be the Fujifilm XS10, comes with its XC 15 to 45mm lens. The Canon EOS M50 comes again with a 15 to 45mm lens. And also one to really look at is the Nikon Z50, which comes with a kit lens 16 to 50, but it also comes with an adapter for other Nikon lenses. What does that mean? That means if you're already a Nikon owner and have a Nikon DSLR and you've already got some Nikon lenses, the bad news is they will not fit the mirrorless bodies. It's a slightly different mounting size. The good news is if you buy the Z50 with this adapter, then that adapter will allow you to put those other lenses onto your mirrorless body. So basically it's an interchange between your standard DSLR mounting and the mirrorless mounting, so that you can use both kind of lenses on the mirrorless body. If you've got even more money, say £2,000, then you could get something like a Sony A7 III with a 28-60 lens. That's a great piece of kit. That's what I'm using the Sony a7 III for my everyday professional work, and it produces some really fabulous results. Very easy to use, great camera. You could also look at the Fujifilm X-T4. That's another great camera with a 16-80 millimeter kit lens, and that's another good option for you. So I did say if you stayed to the end, I would give you a bonus tip. Just before I do that, if you've enjoyed this video, please tell your friends and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell too so you get notified when I release the next video. So this is my top tip if you're just starting out and you've got a limited budget. Take a look at second-hand kit. That might seem a bit obvious, but you get some really great deals on second-hand cameras and second-hand lenses. Lenses in particular can be a really good buy. The technology in cameras changes all the time, and as soon as you've bought one, you can guarantee in 6 or 12 months it'll be out of date. With lenses, it's much less of an issue, and they will tend to fit all the newer models, so there's a lot of compatibility between old lenses and new bodies. So it's a good way of getting some good quality lenses at a lower price. For example, I did a little search when I was creating this video, and right now you could have bought a Nikon D7000, it's a camera I still use today, for less than £200. Of course, you need a lens to go with that. If you wanted a kit lens, you'll get a kit lens for around about £50, an 18-55 millimeter lens. If you wanted a more versatile lens, something like 18-70, then that would probably set you back around 70 quid. So for well under £300, you've got a really great piece of kit that you're not likely to grow out of in the near future. It will really get you started with your photography. It'll get you to develop to doing some quite sophisticated techniques because all the features are there. And most importantly, you'll be able to have fun with it and get some great images. One point I would say, particularly if you're buying secondhand, choose one of the bigger brands, particularly Nikon, Canon, to a certain extent Sony, but there are less of those around, just because it will give you a lot of choice of second-hand lenses. Nikon and Canon have traditionally been the best-selling DSLRs, so there are a lot of second-hand lenses around, so it's fairly easy for you to try and pick one up. If you get one of the other sort of lesser-known brands, you might find there are much less second-hand lenses around, so that'll give you much fewer options to choose from. Finally, do let me know what camera and lens you're using in the comments so that I can tailor some of these videos in the future to make sure I cover the menu options that come up on your particular make or model. If you have enjoyed this, tell your friends, do subscribe. The next video will be going on how to get to grips with your camera, what all those buttons mean, and how to get started taking some great photos.